hello, can you shed light on Israel and Hamas conflict? Your take. I knew this would come. Since yesterday, every time I tweeted or even the Modi review video that I put out, there are comments under there saying, please say something against Hamas. Because, of course, when people ask you to give a reaction on something, depending on what stand they have taken, they want you to take the same stand. It is essentially being forced on you. So it's never like a question which is innocent, right? Which, oh, who do you support? Israel or Palestine? Please let us know. I mean, Sukh Singh here has asked an innocent question, but usually when people come in from different trolldoms and they want you to give their opinion, they're always like, "Arey, ispe kuch bolna? Why aren't you talking about this? Huh? Why aren't you talking about all the people that have died?" Of course, they want you to take a stand, and if you don't take a stand which they want you to take, and you take an opposite stand, then you're caught. Right? And they're like a gotcha moment for them, and they're like, oh, screw you. You are against this and that, and you hate this, and you love this religion versus that religion. It devolves into that. So I'm going to do something. I'm not taking a stand. Compulsion hai kya? Is it compulsory for me to take a stand? Two faraway countries are fighting with each other for decades, like literally decades, since they got independence, since Israel was recognized. There's a whole history of British recognizing, de-recognizing, trying to prop up things, etc. Then there is a history after that of the Holocaust, how migration happened from Germany to Israel, how the Israelis always wanted a land of their own, which they can call them their own. So they chose this land, they came in, then things happened. There were like wars, two of them specifically, and then Palestine just shrunk. Israel's area of influence increased. There was a point where they took over parts of Egypt and Syria also. Then they gave it back. Then Hamas came in. Yeah, Hamas was propped up by the Israeli government only to prevent the liberal socialists in Palestine from actually coming up and democratically having a say in what Palestine should be. So Hamas came in, which always thought that the Piriolo was too soft. So this militant group, which was an extremist militant group, came up, and it was funded by America and Israel. And they took over the Gaza Strip. And now Gaza is the biggest open air prison in the world. A lot of people are confined in a very tiny space. It's apparently 1/4 of the NCR region. There are about 2 lakh people there, just fit in together, who are being bombed constantly by Israel for years. Now, last week, the Hamas hit back and essentially did horrifying terrorist incidents. There is no denying that. They parade-dropped into a music festival, indiscriminately killing people. Israelis took hostages. Just overall assholey terrorist behavior. So, since they did that, Israel is now like, oh, we will teach you a lesson. So now they're bombing Gaza. Hamas threw rockets at them. Lots of rockets, apparently, at Israel. Mossad, which is Israel's big spy agency, it is supposed to be the best in the world. Clearly, they missed out on intelligence on this one. There are questions being asked about that as well. And in all of this, it is basically up to you how you want to look at it. I feel like it is a oppressed versus oppressor story playing out. So there is an oppressor, which is Israel. They have kept like a whole bunch of people confined in one area. And there is the oppressed, Palestinians in the Gaza Strip specifically. There are reports of how Israel is cutting off water, electricity and food for the entire area. If a country has power to do that over one area, then you pretty much know who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed, right? So I'm not taking a stand, boss. It is a very age-old conflict. There are many details that you need to know about the history of what has happened there. Israel, at one point, the Jews of Israel were actually people who were running away from Hitler. So they were the oppressed then, during the World War. Jews have been targeted traditionally for years in multiple countries, and they felt like, we need a place to run to. We need a place which is our own, where we will be safe. So Israel's demands came up. Then Palestine was there, already existing. Things happened. So yeah, that's the story. Do you want me to take a stand? Why should I? Here's the thing, right? Whenever conflicts like these happen around the world, Ukraine, Russia, or Israel, Palestine, the Indian government should take a stand. Don't you think the Indian government should take a stand? The Indian government is also not clear, by the way. Narendra Modi tweeted out saying he condemns the terrorist incident in Israel. Didn't name the Hamas, but he said terrorist incident that has happened, and he condemns it. He didn't take a side whether he's with Israel or with Palestine, right? But everybody assumed that, oh, of course he's with Israel. I highly recommend you watch Akash Banerjee's video on this, Deshbhakt. Akash has given a letter that was written by Modi expressing support to the Palestinian cause. So our government is also playing both sides more or less, because when sides are taken, right, especially like Ukraine and Russia, right, if we support Russia, then the Western nations get pissed. If we support Ukraine, then Russia gets pissed. And we have businesses with all of them. If we take the Palestinian side, then a lot of Western nations again get pissed. If we take the Israel side, the Arab world gets pissed. And there are a lot of Indians in Arab world. So we don't want to piss them off either. So we are basically not taking a real stand. And again, we don't need to, right? Even the government doesn't need to. Yeah? We don't supply arms. We can't supply arms. We can maybe provide humanitarian aid wherever required. And that is, I think, a very decent thing to do for our country. So if, for example, the attacks that have happened last week, completely fair if government decides to send humanitarian aid there or helps extract people from conflict zones. These are things that the government can do. So without taking a stand, that's important. All uncles discussing the Palestine-Israel conflict was fun. Yeah, uncles, Uncles do this a lot. Please don't be an uncle. Although I am uncle age and people outside whenever they're playing cricket, uncle, ball fake do na. But I refuse to have the uncle mentality. As a son of mother of democracy, how can Modi not take a stand for peace and humanity? He has, I guess, Like he condemned the terrorist incident. The coverage on this war shows clear bias of all media houses. Not single news channel is explaining both sides. And that's why I recommended YouTube. There are channels on YouTube who are doing a great job at it. All of these recommendations I'm giving because I believe that you need information, you go there. You need opinion, you go elsewhere. You go on Twitter, you go on news channels, which, as Apurva says, has already taken a side for some bizarre reason. Again, don't understand why. There are people on Twitter with Hitler's face as their DP saying we stand with Israel. Do you understand what you are doing? No, of course you don't. Because you don't need to. You just need to take a stand. The reason why I'm saying don't take a stand is because you will not seek information then. If you take a stand based on the incident that happened last week, you are taking a very surface level stand. You don't understand the history. You don't understand what is going on. It's very clear. And that's why I refuse to take a stand, because I feel like I don't have enough information ever about this issue. Ever since I've started trying to learn about Israel-Palestine, one incident happens, second incident happens. If you go back and back and back, there are multiple incidences that I can just bring up and tell you that, oh, look, in this case, Palestine was wrong. Oh, in this case, Israel was wrong. It happens, right? That's how conflicts work. Right now, there is fog of war. So someone left a comment saying, why aren't you looking at beheading of babies by Hamas? And I'm like, what is this? And I checked. And there was this tweet someone had done about how Hamas is going out and beheading babies somewhere. There was a fact check under it, which was basically Israelis were doing that to Palestinian kids. It's so bizarre. There is fog of war, like it happened with Ukraine and Russia. So it's better not to bring up these incidents sometimes. You see all these bombs going from one place to the other, but do you really recognize which city it is? They might be showing pictures of Gaza and saying that Israel is being bombed. Do you know? Do you know who is being bombed? No, you don't. You don't know the buildings. कोई भी video कोई भी कहीं भी चिपका देगा. So be very careful at times like this. Your compulsion hai kya line sounded no less than Bollywood dialogue where the hero is trashing the villain or something like that. I mean, Sandarsh, that's true, right? Compulsion hai kya? Like, is it compulsory for me to take a stand? You might say take a stand on Manipur. I will take a stand on Manipur because I know it is a part of my country. My fellow Indians are under distress. I will take a stand on that. Israel-Palestine, I don't need to. I will look at it with curiosity to see what sort of effect it will have in the global, geopolitical situation, as our friend Ranveer Allabadia will surely put up. And yeah, I will keep a track of it. I don't need to take a stand. Will Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine stand by me when I talk about inflation under Modi government? Rick, no. That's the thing. Those people do not give a shit about what is happening in India, by the way. We are the ones who are obsessed with what is happening there. They don't give a shit. So it's okay. You don't need to give too much bhav. Like, you can have solidarity against the people being killed because they're getting killed. Yeah. You'd be a monster to actually celebrate killing, mass killings, terrorist bombing, rockets, fake, whatever. There's this article which I can actually actually show you. You really need to read this. For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blown up in our faces. It is in the Times of Israel. You really need to read this because it gives you like a good history of why Hamas was propped up in the first place. There was a point where Hamas was literally known for throwing rocks. Like they were using gulal, what do they call it? Slingshot. That was their choice of weapon. And now they're using rockets and they're paratrooping people on a music festival. You realize what that means? Someone is supplying those weapons. Most likely Iran. Where did Iran get the weapons? Was it the weapons that were sent for Ukraine? Did they somehow end up in Hamas hands and that is being used against Israel? Who knows? Those are questions that need to be answered, and nobody will answer them for you. Take a stand. Take a stand right now. Take a stand. Take a stand. Don't fall for that bullshit. It is a very well done monologue, mate. Good summary. Keep it up with the line. I don't have a stand. Thank you, Pradhan. Thank you. Appreciate it. There was a point I remember Edward had mentioned about US-Israel relations. He had mentioned that US will be pro-Israel since the Israel model is very similar to the US one. This is actually another interesting point you bring up. Even with North Korea, South Korea, with even the Ukraine-Russia war, the Israel-Palestine, you will see this whole alignment based on systems of government, which is capitalism versus a little bit of socialism. With Russia and Ukraine especially, but North Korea, South Korea, these are essentially testing grounds for which ideology wins for the superpowers. It has always felt like that. This is another example of it. Isn't Netanyahu technically doing the same thing that Hitler did to Jews with the blockade? They're just lacking some concentration camps through Gaza, could be considered the world's biggest camp. Sanket, absolutely. That's what I said. It is one of the biggest open air prisons. As I said, if a country can actually shut down electricity, water and food for a giant area, that means it's a prison. I wouldn't say that Netanyahu is doing exactly what Hitler did. Don't say that. I would say that he's the oppressor and the Gaza Strip is the oppressed. Okay, I will now show you a video. Vigio. It's Vigio time, guys. It's Vigio time.
Do you support what Hamas launched on Saturday morning?
Well, this is not the right question, Louis. Really, the right
It's
question.
an important question.
No, it is not an important question because
whether you support their action or not is an important question.
No. It is not an important question. Hamas is a group, is a militant group. You're talking to, with the Palestinian representative. Our position is very well known and clear.
And what is that? Do you support Hamas's actions?
And then you cannot equate. This is not about support or not support. I am here to represent my people, the Palestinian people, what they are going through. I'm not here to condemn anybody. And if anybody that needs to be condemned, it's what you call the only democracy in the Middle East, that is Israel, between parentheses, that is doing what you have just reported, targeting civilians. And this has not just happened the last 48 hours.
Hamas was just targeting Palestinians, but you won't condemn that.
I'll tell you one thing.
Also important to note that he is going to point out that Hamas don't necessarily represent my people. Some people believe that Hamas represents Palestine, but a lot of people don't. Some people think that there are more liberal, socialist, more democratic alternatives to the Hamas. Hamas is a militant group, you realize. Also note how the interviewer is constantly pushing him to take a stand and condemn the Hamas. This is exactly what I was talking about.
Hamas is not the Palestinian government, okay? The Israeli government is giving orders for its organized army. So please don't draw any symmetry here. Don't equate. There is no way you can draw any symmetry. And don't equate between the occupied and the occupier. This doesn't serve justice to understand for your audience and viewers the real situation. Since Israel's establishment, it has had one military doctrine. When it fights, it goes and fights civilians, kill civilians, so they pressure the fighters. Since 1948, and go back to the record, and this has been repeated in Gaza and will continue to be repeated. So the conversation is not a blame game. I am not in the business of blaming the victim here. The real conversation is how do we stop this vicious, deadly cycle?
Yep. How do we stop this vicious, deadly cycle? Do you see anyone talking about that right now? No, you don't. Everybody's like, oh, should Israel bomb Palestine or should Palestine bomb Israel? Really? Is that the conversation that we need to have? When you say you support Israel or Palestine, what do you mean exactly by support? Do you want Palestine to be recognized as a state and do you want them to have a democratic government or do you not? Do you want Israel to stop throwing bombs at Palestine every other day, maintaining the world's largest prison in Gaza. Do you want to take a stand on that? When you take a stand, oh, I support Israel, I support Palestine. What does that exactly mean? When the Ukraine and Russia war happened, there were particular channels that covered the war for months because great footage, like rockets coming, things exploding, da 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 da. Their TRPs went sky high. Same will happen with Israel-Palestine. Palki Sharma will go to Israel, Tel Aviv, she's there, putting bombed photos of bombs, etc., whatever. Nobody's going to Manipur though. Yeah, nobody's going to Manipur. If this brickbat can condemn Hamas, he himself is accepting the entire Palestine is complicit with Hamas. No, Priyanshu, that's my point. He said in the beginning that Hamas don't represent my people. So if he doesn't believe that Hamas is not representing his people, why should I basically do it also? When the same courtesy is not being offered to us. Ever. For the last few years when Gaza was being bombed, Palestine was being bombed, we haven't been offered the same courtesy. So why should I do it now? It's a stand that you might disagree with, might agree with. But I wanted to show that clip just to tell you that there is deep context here at play. So the stands are taken according to this sort of nuance. The people there are taking those stands. We don't need to. It is not a compulsion. That is the whole point. Do not feel like it's a compulsion that you have to side with one or the other, condemn one or the other. Doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The people who are taking calls are giant capitalists and techno-feudalists that exist all over the world. They are taking calls on wars. They are taking calls on what happens between countries. You and I don't matter, boss. So don't force yourself. काहे को दिमाग खराब करना है तुम्हारा? Why do you want to stress yourself out for no reason? Don't do it.